Discover how a single dad janitor's one plate saved a $50 million deal and transformed lives forever. Dave pushed his mop across the sleek floor of the high-rise, the sparkle of polished concrete reflecting the city lights filtering through the vast glass walls. It was late, the world outside bustling with deals and dreams, while he remained an unseen silhouette in the corporate environment. Each night, he tidied up as someone else's dream unfolded, and despite the physical toll, his heart was heavy with an impending sense of failure. Would Emma ever understand that this backbreaking work was all for her? He never wanted her to feel the weight of their struggles. As he worked, a glint caught his eye. In a forgotten corner of the room, hidden behind an inconspicuous stack of paperwork, he uncovered a dusty hand-painted plate. Its intricate design felt familiar, a relic of his father's past. Memories flooded him, evenings spent listening to stories of honor and resilience, his father's unyielding principles shaping Dave's resolve. Cleaning the plate ignited a longing within him, a desire to provide Emma with the life and education he could only dream of. Could this artifact hold the key to unearthing a family legacy he'd almost forgotten? His thoughts spiraled into darker corners as he realized that all this effort could vanish in the pursuit of shiny corporate greed. Tonight, two rival companies were locked in a high-stakes negotiation worth millions, and amidst the tension, betrayal loomed. Dave had witnessed enough betrayals in the office to understand that this deal could break lives. Would those executives, draped in power and privilege, pause to reflect on the human cost of their decisions? Or would they plunge forward into the abyss of ambition and greed? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With tension like a taut string in the air, he lingered near the conference room door, peering in as corporate titans exchanged barbed words with clenched jaws. The aroma of fine food, a stark contrast to the unresolved conflicts swirling there, bore witness to a moment that could fade into oblivion. He saw glimmers of fear in their eyes, shadows of people trapped by the weight of their ambitions. As they squabbled, he hesitated, battling the urge to slip away into the comfort of anonymity. But the reflection of his father, the ideals he grew up on, urged him to confront the moment. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. With the forgotten plate in his grasp, he felt an electric current of determination surge within him. Those people needed to reconnect, to remember the importance of loyalty, family, trust, not just numbers on a spreadsheet. Would they hear him, an overlooked janitor in a sea of suits? You're not just making a deal, these decisions affect lives. He called out, his voice surprising even himself. The tension escalated, and as sharp gazes turned toward him, he felt the full weight of their scrutiny. His heart raced, but the glint of the plate ignited his resolve. Yet, as hope flickered, a powerful executive's steely gaze shot daggers through the room, oiling the tension to a boiling point. Dave stood at a precipice, torn between silence and the anguished truth he dared to reveal. Would exposing his father's legacy serve as both his salvation and downfall? The remnants of the plate shone brighter under the oppressive lights, and he wrestled with the significance of his next words, uncertain if they would be enough to change a room full of hardened hearts. The room trembled with anticipation, the weight of Dave's bold declaration capturing the attention of hardened executives. He balanced precariously between defiance and vulnerability, the stakes higher than he ever imagined. In their eyes, he was just a janitor, yet in this singular moment, he felt more like a prophet questioning their moral compass. He could hear the rustle of suits adjusting in their seats, their expressions morphing from disbelief to irritation. Who does this man think he is? They must have wondered. But despite the palpable discomfort in the air, Dave felt a surge of clarity. Each whispered conversation among the executives faded into the background as the memories of his father came rushing back, the gentle way he had held his mother's hand through difficult times, the lessons he had imparted about integrity. It wasn't just about success, it was about character. Every deal you make has consequences far beyond profit margins, Dave pressed on, his voice steadying but laced with urgency. You're not trading just numbers today, you're shaping futures. Look around you. This room is filled with people who depend on your decisions. He gestured toward the window, the sprawling city lights twinkling like stars, representing the dreams of countless souls. Those ambitions and dreams, they belong to families, just like mine. An uncomfortable silence hung in the air, a chasm separating his words from the heart of the boardroom. The steely-faced executive who initially glared at him narrowed his eyes, becoming a tangible antagonist. Was it contempt or fear he felt? In that moment, it became clear, Dave wasn't just fighting for his daughter's future, he was challenging a pervasive culture of greed masked as ambition. The icy tension was an almost physical presence, and as seconds dragged into an eternity, he felt his heart thump in sync with his breath. Was he really ready to stand firm in such turbulent waters? Yet the image of Emma, the proud glint in her eyes after acing an exam, the laughter they shared on their couch drove him to continue. Then suddenly, he felt a shift in the room. One executive, a woman with sharp features and a reputation for being tough but fair, shifted in her seat, her expression softening just a fraction as she studied him. Did she see the humanity in his plea? Or perhaps she simply recognized the core truths he articulated, truths buried beneath layers of corporate messages and profit-first mentalities. "Mr. Janitor," she began, her tone more conciliatory. "What you say is intriguing. But we're not just numbers, we are professionals with responsibilities." There was an unexpected openness in her voice, and he seized that flicker of hope. "That's exactly right. But remember, it's our responsibility to lead with purpose. What legacy do you want to leave behind?" Dave's heart raced. Was this the opening he needed? Would they allow themselves to go beyond their positions to connect with life beyond spreadsheets and profit? Just as he was about to forge ahead, to drive home his point, the executive who had glared at him previously interjected sharply, "This is a distraction we cannot afford." A door that had been cracked open now threatened to slam shut. As the tension escalated once more, doubt gnawed at his resolve. Did he possess the strength to challenge this corporate juggernaut? With every second that passed, the stakes grew. His words could shatter complacency or cast him back into anonymity. He took a deep breath and prepared to raise the stakes further. Little did he know, the path he tread would lead him toward uncovering not just the truth about the corporate culture surrounding him, but about his very own hidden capabilities. The moment for boldness was now. Would he seize it, or would he allow fear to dictate his fate? As he opened his mouth to speak, a new uncertainty loomed ahead. Would he ignite change, or would the chance slip away forever? In that charged silence, Dave inhaled deeply, feeling the air swell in his lungs as the weight of his convictions pressed upon him. Striking the right note would be crucial. Could he frame his words in a way that would not only capture their attention but ignite something within them? As he steadied himself, the realization dawned upon him, this was not just about confronting their arrogance, it was about awakening a sense of responsibility they had forgotten. He scanned the faces in front of him, hardened facades, yet flickers of curiosity emerged in some. The moment was daunting, he could feel the energy shifting as he chose his next words carefully. "Distraction or not, I am here to spotlight a truth that you cannot disregard. The lives that you impact extend far beyond your spreadsheets. They are woven intricately with dreams, hopes, and yes, even failures. Do the names of those families haunt you at night? Do you ponder if your choices will build legacies or wreck futures?" The tremor in his voice betrayed him, but he pressed on, heart pounding. The executive who had glared at him, a man with thick eyebrows that arched skeptically, seemed less certain now. Dave recognized that there was something he could do here, something powerful. This wasn't merely a passion project, it was a mission. "I'm not suggesting charity, I'm urging you to reconsider your standards of success. Profit can be achieved through integrity. Imagine how much more satisfying it will be to not just close deals, but to create real change." The room, once choked with disdain, felt different now. Heads nodded ever so slightly, it was subtle but unmistakable. Was he beginning to breach the wall between them and unlock their sense of humanity? As doubt began to evaporate, he felt an unfamiliar sensation rise within him. It was self-assurance, a strength he never tapped into. Just as he thought a breakthrough was within grasp, the sharp-featured executive from earlier interrupted his momentum. You speak of integrity and legacy, but we have a business to run, and our stakeholders want to endorse a vision devoid of profit. Her voice had icicles hanging from every word, but Dave saw beyond the harshness. He sensed a vulnerability, a crack in her armor. What if he could speak to that? Let us lay it bare then, he replied, lowering his pitch to create urgency. What if you alter the game? What if you become the pioneers who marry profit with purpose? He paused, envisioning the change he wanted to inspire. You have the power to redefine success. You could emerge as vanguards of a new corporate era, a legacy you could be proud of. As he dared to step beyond mere words into a visionary space, the room was enveloped in tension and intrigue. The atmosphere crackled as whispers floated between executives. He leaned in, his commitment revealed. Consider this an opportunity to elevate not just your bottom line, but a culture of accountability and humanity. And then, as realization dawned within him, he internalized a deeper call to action. This wasn't just a corporate dialogue, it was a personal revelation and awakening to his own potential as a persuasive force. The janitor's voice could reach farther than he ever believed possible. Suddenly, the door swung wide, and a sharp knock cut through the atmosphere. An unexpected arrival, a news reporter stepping into the meeting room, poised with a camera and a notepad. The stakes just escalated dramatically. How would Dave seize this opportunity? Was he ready to articulate the vision sharp enough to captivate not just the executives, but the world? The moment had arrived, and with it, the realization that he might simultaneously forge a path to authenticity for himself and the corporation. The episode of truth was unfolding, but could he harness this volatile moment to elicit real transformation? The air thickened as the news reporter stepped inside, her camera eye gleaming with potential. Dave's heart raced. The meeting's purpose shifted dramatically, this was no longer a private dialogue. It became a public dialogue, where every word could echo far beyond the room. A flicker of self-doubt threatened to seize him. Could he maintain the momentum? But that flicker was quickly extinguished by a surge of determination. He was already in too deep, swept away by the urgency of his cause. He glanced at the executives, who now wore expressions ranging from defensiveness to intrigue. The Watcher of the Truth stood before them, and as he turned his gaze back to the reporter, he saw her poised to document every nuance of the debate. He needed to guide the conversation, not to hide from the spotlight but to embrace it. Behind every decision you make today lies a story worth telling, he said, addressing the reporter directly. Stories of families impacted by choices that seem distant but are intimately intertwined with the reality of their day-to-day lives. The executives squirmed a bit, the challenge toward vulnerability put them on edge. You're facing a choice right now. Is this about numbers, or is this about the people the numbers represent? The weight of his words hung in the air, almost tangible. The sharp-featured executive, Anita, shifted uncomfortably. This is a business, she rebutted, although the edge in her voice seemed to waver. Our responsibility is toward our stakeholders. Dave felt the crowd's stir of tension. But what if redefining responsibility creates legacy? He pushed back, the energy around him shifting like a live wire. Your stakeholders also include the communities that rely on you. Short-sighted gains can yield devastating losses. Imagine telling the story of how your decisions empowered families rather than dismantled futures. The room was charged, a vibrant mix of resistance and intrigue swirling around him. He realized something profound emerged, his conviction was contagious. Dave wasn't just fighting for change within the company. He was on a mission to redefine the very essence of their corporate identity. Moral imperatives should align with profits. Emphasizing the emotional aspect of business convinced him he had tapped into something they had long ignored. He turned back to the reporter, his voice steady. This is why I'm here. There is an opportunity to set the narrative around how we impact lives, not just dollars and cents. A flicker of recognition passed among executives. They were hooked on the vision. Here was the chance to mold what corporate success could look like. As he spoke, his internal dialogue blossomed. For too long, he had relegated his ideas to the sidelines of his mind, constrained by his role. This proved he held the power to influence those at the top, to be their guiding light in uncharted waters. With that realization came the understanding of his professional worth. Before he could gather himself, another executive chimed in, a hint of intrigued concern lacing his tone. And if the stakeholders don't back this new vision? What happens then? All the more reason to start the conversation here and now, Dave countered, his heart pounding with urgency. Leading from the head shouldn't mean shutting out compassion from the heart. Outside the meeting room, he noticed the journalist scribbling furiously, capturing the essence of his words. Awareness dawned, a possibility flickered to life. Not only could he impact these corporate titans, but perhaps reawakening humanity in the business landscape was the first step to rebuilding his own identity. But the moment was fragile. Would they sidestep his challenge under the guise of pragmatism, or was he crafting a moment large enough for them to step into? The tension hung heavy, an electric anticipation crackling in the air. Was he prepared to reshape their destiny, and in turn, unlock his own? The stakes were impossibly high as they deliberated, their path fogged by uncertainty. But there was no turning back now, the journey to enlightenment had begun. What if they chose to embrace this shift? What would this mean for Dave's future, not just in this company, but in his life? The pivotal moment held its breath, waiting for the next move. The room shifted into a tableau of silence, an almost cinematic moment pregnant with possibility. Dave felt the weight of their gazes, flickering between skepticism and intrigue. Behind them, the reporter was still poised, her presence adding an electric charge to the atmosphere. This wasn't just another board meeting. It was a make-or-break moment for his aspirations, and he sensed an opening. He could feel the subtle change in energy. Their defensiveness was waning, replaced by curiosity. To cultivate this burgeoning interest, he needed to push deeper, yet he also became acutely aware of the tightrope he walked. Was he leveraging their openness or merely testing their limit? In this instant, he had to act. Alone, he couldn't change the world, but within this room, he could change minds. The essence of any business, Dave continued, his tone calm but insistent, is to serve the human part of the equation. Yes, you have shareholders, he gestured toward Anita, but measure the impact on the communities that exist because of your choices. How do you want your legacy to be told? The executives exchanged glances, and with each passing beat, he felt the foundations of their reluctance shift. Deeper than mere profits lay the uncharted territory of purpose they had neglected too long. Are you suggesting we forego profits? Anita interjected again, her voice sharper this time, yet less hostile. Dave found that her challenge was not an adversarial stance but rather a hunger for clarity. What I am suggesting is that by aligning profits with purpose, you invigorate your brand, your company's integrity remains intact, and you'll cultivate genuine loyalty among your customer base. It's not an either-or proposition anymore. The dialogue simmered, and he observed their defensive walls strengthening, then trembling once more. He was no longer just an employee speaking in a stiff suit. This was him, passionate and invigorated, understanding not just the plan but crafting a vision as he spoke. The notion that he could forge a path not only for the corporation but also for himself was enthralling. He pressed onward. Consider this: what happens when stories of your positive impact start reaching your stakeholders? The emotional resonance swells, fueling further investment, and protects against future downturns. When your business thrives, so do the communities you touch. Amidst the charged atmosphere, Dave surged ahead, the weight of self-doubt falling away. He was a leader in that moment, lifted by his own conviction. Yet, a darker whisper nudged at him: what if they pushed back? And if they did, what would that mean for him, a man finally discovering his voice? He felt the edges of fear graze his consciousness, but they were merely sparks on the surface of his confidence. Let us not forget, he shifted slightly, framing his next words carefully. The connection between company culture and its influence on employees is intimate. An inspired workforce can elevate profits beyond what we currently allow ourselves to envision. Looking at their straightened shoulders and contemplative faces, he dared to hope that rebellion against complacency was setting in. Could he genuinely reshape not just the board's decisions but also their understanding of what business could and should accomplish? As the deliberation continued, Dave wrestled internally with the possibility of failure. What if they turned against the ideas presented? Would they dismiss him as an idealist detached from reality? The thought lodged painfully in his gut, forcing him to embrace a greater truth. He had already taken a leap unlike any before. He was standing his ground while others hesitated at the precipice. This was his moment. Just as he prepared to offer a compelling conclusion, the energy shifted, eyes drifted toward the reporter, who had paused her scribbling, seemingly frozen by the narrative implications unfurling before her. What if, he asked suddenly, allowing an audacious frame to take hold in the room, we committed to a pilot program? Let us be the change we seek in a tangible, measurable capacity. Take that risk with me today, and I'll dedicate myself fully to making it succeed. The silence blanketed them, anticipation laced with disbelief. All eyes zeroed in on him, as his heart galloped with an almost primal rhythm. The conversation was teetering on the edge of a groundbreaking shift, and he was all in, willing to stake everything on the belief that he could ignite the spark of change. But there, in that dizzying moment, he sensed the potential for rejection looming closer than acceptance. Would they step into uncertainty, or would fear hold them captive and slay his burgeoning ambition? He held his breath, embracing the fragile breathless pause as the decision weighed heavily on all. Would they embrace the vision, and ignite the flames of transformation, or would they extinguish the possibility he had so fervently tried to instill? Dave's heart raced as the silence stretched on, thick with tension. He could feel the weight of judgment pressing down on him, each second dragging out like a drawn-out verdict. There was a tangible divide in the room. On one side lay the potential for innovation, while on the other lurked the safety of the status quo. He had been to this crossroads before, shackled by indecision, but not today. Today, he would not allow fear to dictate his next move. Anita's intense gaze locked onto his, freezing him in place momentarily. The reporter, sensing the shift in the room, began to write again, her pen gliding quickly across the notepad. That simple act made Dave acutely aware of the stakes. This wasn't just about a board meeting anymore, it was laying the groundwork for his future, and potentially, a broader impact. Swallowing hard, he broke the fragile silence, pushing through the discomfort pooling in his stomach. What if this pilot program could reshape the way we think about success? It's not solely about numbers. It's about creating a narrative that embodies our commitment to societal impact. His voice held steadiness, surprisingly firm even to his own ears. As the words broke the stillness, he noticed expressions start to shift, hesitation giving way to contemplation. What if this wasn't the moment of rejection he feared but rather the dawning of their acceptance? He imagined the visuals, teams in the community working hand in hand, the company logo standing as a beacon of hope. The very thought ignited something deep within him, a fire he desperately wanted to share. Imagine your teams inspired by more than just quarterly metrics. A workforce that wakes up excited, devoted not just to their jobs but to the greater good we can foster together. When our employees thrive, our business thrives. It's a cyclic benefit. He leaned forward slightly, sensing a shift, a crack in their collective uncertainty. He felt Anita soften ever so slightly. And what would this pilot look like? Her question opened a crack of possibility. It was a doorway he had hoped she would approach. The tension in his shoulders eased a fraction as he laid out a concrete step, a small-scale initiative, perhaps targeting a local school for mentorship programs or educational sponsorship. Initiatives that not only engaged employees but also uplifted the community. By investing a fraction of our budget here, we can measure the return not just in dollar signs but in community engagement, in employee motivation, and in brand loyalty from consumers who resonate with our efforts, he added, his mind racing ahead to the potential ripple effect of their decision. Yet, anxiety crept back. Would they see the merit, or would this proposal feel like a dream too ambitious for a conservative boardroom? He found himself searching their faces for glimmers of approval against the backdrop of his turmoil. Suddenly, the sense of risk crystallized in a startling realization: the very act of proposing this pilot was a transformation of self. He was no longer Dave, the mind-numbing cog in an indifferent machine. He was a catalyst for something much bigger, a dreamer willing to face the consequences of his aspirations. But what if they rejected it? He couldn't let that fear paralyze him. "Let's redefine success together," he urged. "If we succeed, we can lead this narrative in our industry. If we fail, we learn, and we grow. Isn't that the essence of good business?" His conviction plowed through the doubt, projecting an aura he scarcely recognized as his own. He watched as the executives' expressions deepened into contemplation, their dynamics shifting as deliberation cascaded through the room. Dave took a breath, and for the first time, he felt like he belonged there not just as a participant, but as a key player. The moment hung in the air, an intersection between the past he was eager to leave behind and the promise of a future he could hardly visualize. Before any answers emerged, he realized there was still a significant hurdle before him. An unfamiliar voice broke into the tension: "Dave, what if we consider this idea further, but with conditions?" At that moment, he knew the battle was not over yet, and he braced himself for a challenge that would test everything he had just resurrected in himself. Would this be another setback, or could he find a way to navigate the conditions they might impose? The stakes hovered higher than ever. Dave's pulse quickened again, adrenaline surging as the implications of the stranger's conditional approval sank in. Conditions. The word echoed in his mind, swirling with uncertainty. He had steered bravely into uncharted waters, and now it seemed he was faced with the possibility of being swept back into the current of complacency. He couldn't let this slip away. With renewed determination, he scanned the room for allies. Anita remained unfazed, her expression a mixed bag of skepticism and intrigue. The others, however, were divided. Some nodded slowly, while others furrowed their brows, contemplating what conditions could mean. It was a fragile moment, and he needed to grasp it, molding their thoughts to support his vision. "Thank you for considering it," he said, injecting an air of confidence into his voice. "I realize that embracing something new can be scary. But we shouldn't lose sight of why we embarked on this path in the first place. Let us use these conditions as an opportunity to iterate, to refine our approach based on tangible outcomes." The words poured from him almost instinctively. He spoke to them not just as colleagues but as potential co-creators of a legacy. Yet, internally, he grappled with looming doubts. What if the conditions they proposed were to dilute the impact of the initiative, to lace it with compromises that would render it ineffective? He had to prepare for that prospect. "Let us define these further," Anita interjected, her voice steady but cool. "What parameters do you envision? Can we quantify success so that we minimize risk while maximizing our message?" There it was, the crux of the matter. In an instant, he recognized this as his moment to pivot, to not only propose a vision but to craft the roadmap that would navigate him through the potential obstacles. "What if," he mused, "we adopt a phased implementation? We could start with a small, manageable portion of the program that trials out the hypothesis of community engagement and employee motivation. If it fails, we learn and adapt. If it succeeds, it becomes the gold standard for the rest of our initiatives." He could almost hear gears shifting within the minds around him. They hadn't anticipated a modular framework, one that allowed them to dip their toes rather than plunge headfirst into the unknown. Anita's eyes glinted with consideration, but there was still a barrier to overcome. And what would that initial success look like? Taking a deep breath, he conjured images of achievable targets. "We could integrate feedback loops with employee volunteers, measuring both engagement levels and community feedback." He flipped through his mental portfolio for examples of similar initiatives that proved effective, aiming to substantiate his argument. We could also establish metrics for employee retention, ensuring that our bottom line remains intact while pursuing innovation. What was happening felt almost surreal. His ideas were not just being permitted, they were evolving. The boardroom, once suffocating, was now charged with possibility. Each nod and shifting gaze indicated a collective reconsideration of their norms. Yet there was still a lingering uncertainty gnawing at him, a reminder that this shift hinged on a delicate balance. In a moment of clarity, he realized the most profound condition had little to do with the program itself. It sat squarely on his shoulders. He would need to nurture this newfound momentum, solidify trust, and ensure the vision wasn't distorted in calibration to conditions dictated by fear. "Are we on the same page?" Dave asked, his pulse steadying as he projected calm into the room. Before anyone could respond, another voice broke through. "Is this really about the company's image, or do we genuinely care about the impacts we're discussing?" Dave's stomach sank as he faced the new question, fully realizing the moral implications underlying this venture. It wasn't merely a business model, it was an opportunity to shape values in the workplace. The air thickened again, reminding him that transformation started within. Could he commit to this idea, and not just out of self-preservation? Would he risk confronting the very doubts that had kept him frozen for so long? He sensed that whether he would embrace this challenge was now the pivotal point, not just for them, but for him. In this unfolding drama of professional development, he approached the decision with cautious eagerness, but the tightrope of uncertainty loomed large overhead, threatening to trap him once again. If he remained resolute, could he genuinely alter the narrative, not just for the company, but for himself? The flickering tension in the air hung heavy with potential. But doubt awaited just beyond the door. What lay ahead wasn't just a proposal, it was the dawning of a pivotal moment that would test his character and resolve in ways he had yet to imagine. The room felt almost electric, anticipation hanging thickly in the air as Dave absorbed the weight of the question. It resonated within him, merging with his own uncertainties, creating a tempest of doubt about his motives. Was he really willing to lead a transformation rooted in genuine concern, or was he simply navigating toward a safer, more marketable version of success? The moment stretched taut around him, as if the world had paused, waiting for his answer. "Look," he began, his voice quaking slightly but gaining strength as he spoke. "If we are here to make a difference, and I believe we are, then it can't just be about numbers on a spreadsheet or a polished image. We owe it to ourselves and our employees to pursue initiatives that align with our core values. That's what this is all about." Silence fell momentarily as his words settled. Nods began to emerge, as if each person contemplated the deeper implications of an authentic approach over mere optics. Casting a quick glance at Anita, he was met with an approving nod that bolstered his resolve, but the flicker of skepticism still danced in the eyes of a few others. "I think embracing transparency is key," he continued, attempting to rally, even amid the uncertainty. "Initiating a dialogue about our efforts will engage not only our employees but also the community. We can illustrate how our mission transcends beyond profits. This can be about real impact." With each word, Dave's perception evolved. He sensed an internal shift. He was no longer just outlining a vision but embodying it. The nausea that had gripped him earlier now transformed into an electric thrill of purpose. This was potential taking root, both for the venture and for him personally. Anita's analytical gaze sharpened. "And what metrics would demonstrate transparency? How can we ensure that our employees and stakeholders see our commitment? What if we regularly share progress updates, celebrate small wins, and adjust strategies based on collective feedback?" Dave suggested, an idea crystallizing in his mind. "We can create an open forum for discussions where people feel empowered to voice their opinions. If our community sees that we're sincerely invested in their input, we'll establish trust." The room began to maneuver again, a gentle wave of thought. Dave felt the shift, the impact of owning his voice and his vision, allowing it to flourish. He felt competent yet vulnerable. It was a strange thrill to put himself out there. The adrenaline surged again, but this time, it was invigorating. He realized the personal stakes had risen dramatically. If he succeeded, he would not only redefine the project but reshape his own identity as a leader. If he failed, however, the fear of ridicule and the specter of missed opportunity loomed large. Constructing a culture of accountability is what can set us apart, Dave stated decisively. Incorporating our employees in the conversation will enhance their sense of ownership in our mission. We cannot let fear dictate our decisions. This is about brave, calculated risks. A hushed murmur swept through the room as people began to understand the depths of his commitment. Dave's eyes shifted from one colleague to another, searching for any hint of dissent or acceptance. He would have to protect this nascent strength, to solidify it not just within the meeting but beyond it. Yet, his heart thudded with an emerging specter: what to do with the impending confrontation. The voice of doubt now morphed into an echo of confrontation from his own past, a setback he never fully addressed. What if the mistakes he made before reared their heads as haunting reminders here? Would the specter of failure hold him captive, or could he harness it to fuel his growth? Feeling the weight of expectancy surge within him, Dave took a breath, contemplating how to bridge the chasm between potential and reality. Let us commit to this, together, he urged, a blend of hope and seriousness in his tone. Let us not falter in the face of fear. Instead, let us create a bold legacy. As silence enveloped the room once more, his gaze lingered on Anita, who appeared as a mirror of hope and challenge. In that moment, the sense of possibility transcended his initial doubts, illuminating a new path. The question loomed larger than ever: was he truly ready to confront the ghosts of his past while leading a charge toward a visionary future? A flicker of anticipation played at the edges of his mind, hinting at battles yet to come. How would he reconcile his personal history with the demands of being a leader in this transformative effort? The meeting was merely the beginning. The real test lay just ahead, waiting in the shadows. As the meeting drew to a close and colleagues filed out with muted discussions and thoughtful expressions, Dave lingered for a moment, wrestling with the mounting pressure of his commitment. The adrenaline that had fueled him softened into a dull ache of anticipation, a reminder of what lay ahead. His notions of success and failure collided within him, forming a storm he could no longer ignore. Outside, the late afternoon light illuminated the office, casting long shadows across the floor. It seemed less like a refuge and more like a battleground. The specter of his past loomed larger: years spent meandering through corporate hierarchies without truly engaging, where fear paralyzed him from taking real risks or assuming genuine responsibility at pivotal moments. Each misstep had left indelible marks on his psyche, warnings tattooed on his memories. Now, as he stood at the precipice of leadership, could he channel those lessons, or would they ensnare him? Feeling overwhelmed, Dave considered the warmth of Anita's earlier nod. She epitomized the trust he sought from his colleagues. He needed to cultivate a culture where everyone felt secure voicing their ideas, fears, and setbacks. He imagined how cultural transformation could ignite enthusiasm across his organization, yet he wrestled with a nagging question: was he truly capable of guiding others when he occasionally felt lost himself? Back at his desk, he opened his laptop, planning the next steps for their initiative. Each keystroke felt monumental. This was no longer just about him. As he fired off emails to set up feedback sessions, he visualized the energy in those discussions, the collaboration that could redefine their mission. But in the depths of his excitement, a gnawing apprehension returned. What if he opened the floodgates of honesty only to be confronted with sharp criticisms of his leadership style? What if he were seen as inadequate? With determination, he pushed aside the doubts, reminding himself of the shared commitment he proposed in the meeting. This was not merely an individual journey, it was collective. Every stakeholder's voice mattered, and he had to remind himself that vulnerability could lead to growth. As dusk settled, he received a message from Anita. She suggested a one-on-one meeting to discuss ideas for implementing the feedback forum. The prospect sent a jolt through his system. He could almost hear the conversations they might have, their back and forth forging a deeper bond between management and staff. Yet looming in the background was the unresolved conflict of his past failure, a pivotal project he mismanaged that still shadowed his conscience, influencing his actions even now. Could he share that experience with Anita? Would disclosing his past show transparency or reveal weakness? He grappled with the implications of honesty, torn between fear of judgment and the desire to inspire trust through authenticity. The echo of the confrontation with his history crescendoed into clarity. It was time for him to take ownership not only of the future of the company but also of his past. What if this vulnerability was the key to establishing the accountability he desired? This could serve as a catalyst for personal growth and inject vitality into his leadership ethos. He inhaled deeply, shutting the laptop to allow the thoughts to swirl freely in his mind. Can this revelation be transformative? Can facing his ghosts unlock the doors to an empowered future? As excitement mingled with trepidation, he felt the emotional surge pulse within him, amplifying the stakes. As he prepared for his meeting with Anita, he recognized a pivotal choice lay ahead. Would he redefine his narrative by confronting those shadows? He lingered at the doorway, contemplating what to share, unaware that this singular moment in his career could redefine everything he thought he knew about leadership. Yet another challenge loomed nearer: the reveal of his past connection to a critical decision that could resurface, creating waves of uncertainty. Would his honesty be enough to withstand the forthcoming scrutiny? The answer lay tantalizingly close, just waiting to be unearthed. The morning sun streamed through the high-rise window, illuminating the office in a soft glow. Dave sat at his desk, his heart steadying with purpose as he prepared for his meeting with Anita. The decisions made in the boardroom had shifted the dynamics, presenting him with an unprecedented opportunity for growth not only for himself but for the company he had admired from the sidelines for far too long. Every email he sent, every step he took towards implementing their pilot program, resonated with a renewed sense of responsibility. The murky shadows of his past were still there, but they no longer haunted him, they illuminated the path he intended to forge. In confronting his history, he had unearthed lessons that shaped his leadership aspirations. The weight of decision-making no longer felt paralyzing, it felt empowering. When Anita finally stepped into his office, she wore a smile that reflected understanding and camaraderie. "I'm impressed with your plan for the feedback sessions," she began, sitting down confidently. "But I want to dive deeper. How do we ensure everyone feels safe enough to share?" Her question ignited Dave's passion. "Creating a psychological safety net is crucial," he replied, his voice tinged with excitement. "We need to cultivate an open-door policy where vulnerabilities are welcomed, not judged. What if we implement regular check-ins where employees can voice concerns without fear?" Their conversation flowed and ebbed, uncovering intricacies of leadership he had never fully appreciated. Their ideas intermingled, morphing into a solid framework that could redefine success within their organization. The collaboration sparked a conviction within him that this was a turning point, one that transformed him from a mere functionary to an agent of change. Days turned to weeks, and as the pilot program launched, Dave witnessed an overwhelming response. Employees engaged with enthusiasm, filling the feedback forums with insights and suggestions. It was a revelation: he had catalyzed a culture shift that promoted honesty and collaboration at every level. Unexpected feedback from the staff streamed in, showcasing how much they valued branching out from traditional corporate norms. They were no longer bound by the pretense of the suit mentality. Instead, their contributions ignited meaningful conversations about purpose beyond profit. Seeing his coworkers light up with passion reinvigorated Dave. He had truly achieved the impossible. Meanwhile, recognition started pouring in. The executives expressed appreciation for his leadership and initiative, something that haunted Dave for years: the fear of not being seen. No longer in the shadows, he stood tall, confident in the authority he had once thought might evade him. Then came the ultimate validation. At a quarterly meeting, the company decided to publicly announce Dave's initiative and unveiled impressive statistics illustrating employee engagement growth. The room erupted in applause. It was not just a moment of glory for Dave, it was a profound acknowledgement of what they had collectively built. "Your vision transcended the walls of this building," Anita praised him during a private conversation afterward. "You've inspired a legacy that prioritizes social responsibility alongside business metrics." As he listened, the realization hit Dave: he had transformed not only the internal fabric of the company but also his sense of self-worth. This was no longer an uphill struggle for recognition, it was a well-earned accomplishment built on tenacity and heart. His destination was no longer obscured by ghosts of the past but illuminated by the clarity of foresight. He had mastered the art of leadership rooted in authenticity and compassion, paving the way for a new cultural paradigm that others would embrace long after he moved on. In that moment of recognition, he found a deeper truth within himself. He was not just a janitor who uncovered a forgotten plate, he was a force of transformation, a father setting an example for his daughter that success could be measured in ethical choices rather than just financial gains. In the quiet satisfaction of that newfound identity, Dave smiled. He had stepped out of anonymity and into a realm where his contributions echoed, and his voice resonated. His journey was one of profound personal growth, and he was determined never to lose sight of that. Now was the time to reflect, to conclude his chapter as the janitor who saved a deal, but in doing so, unleashed something mighty, a legacy both for his company and for the future he envisioned for Emma. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting this channel through these actions.